Good morning. This is Mrs. Terry, and I'm going to try to do a voiceover this morning for Unit 3 so that perhaps I can help some of you all of you, get through the Unit 3 test a little effortlessly. First of all, I want to talk about a little bit about Zoom, not much, but a little bit about Zoom. Most of you understand, know all of this. You probably know more than I do, but I want to remind you to be sure and read Mrs. Carter's and Mrs. Dixon, if she's posted any, their instructions on how to manipulate Zoom. Also, what your environment should be like when you are in Zoom. And then I have posted several announcements on our health science pages, and that also has instructions. But just to reiterate, when you get into Zoom, you unmute your mic. That's usually in the bottom left-hand corner of your page. If it says you are muted, you need to unmute yourself, so that we as instructors can see you and hear you. You need to turn the volume all the way down on your, or very, very low on your screen. Actually all the way down, because we are hearing background noise, and that is very disturbing to many students. So you unmute yourself and turn your volume down. And then you need to only be able to chat to me or one of the hosts. You cannot privately chat. We have a record of everything that goes on in Zoom, and we know if any chats are going on. So you cannot chat, of course, among yourselves. You need to have nobody else around, no children, no dogs. If you have a fan on, you need to turn that off. It's amazing what little bitty background noises occur. So please take heed to all of those instructions that we have given, so that other students who need quiet can take their test. Once you have gotten into Zoom, you split your screen and you put Zoom on one side and you open Canvas when I instruct you to, when I give you the password. Now, the password is usually posted on your specific course announcement page, and then I also try to email every one of you individually, and you need to have that password when you sit down to take that test. My passwords are all in caps. So please don't text me telling me your password doesn't work, because it does, and people are already on the test. So it is something you are doing. It needs to all be in caps, and you need to have it ready to go when you enter Zoom. The password is for your test in Canvas. Let me think now, what else do we want to go over? So you will start your test in Canvas. As always, put your password in. You have 50 minutes. Many of you are completing faster than that. Within an average of 30 minutes, you have 50 minutes. You need to practice at home. Go to the back of your chapter and take some of those multiple choice questions that are in the back of your chapter, and see how long actually spending 1 minute on each of those questions takes. I think some of you are speeding through for a fear that you're not going to get through. You certainly do need to get through within 50 minutes, but you need to just see what 1 minute actually feels like. So practice how long 1 minute feels like, and that way maybe you won't be rushing through these tests. Then when you get through taking your test and you submit your test, you may leave Zoom. You do not have to ask me. You can just click off, and I know, I can see your screen, and I know that you have completed. So you don't need to worry about that. You do not need to be absent. You know you have to be in the hospital in order to receive an absence. If you are late, you will not get to take a makeup test. You need to all be in Zoom waiting room before 8:45. Your homework really should be submitted a day before it is due. Many of you are waiting till 8 a.m. and your clock may be different, and so the homework is not going through because it is after 8 o'clock. And you cannot email me your homework. I have 120 students. You can't imagine if I were to get 120 emails the night before the test. I'm not rushing you through your homework, but I am saying you need to get your homework done and you need to get it posted. I would highly recommend a day before. You cannot resubmit homework anymore. We're on Unit 3 now. I think you know all these processes. And I know this wasted a lot of some people's time listening to this introduction, but hopefully it is helping those who need it. As far as study techniques, I have been asked, what can I do to help me study? I think we've posted that about as much as I can suggest, but what I am hearing is you're not spending enough time studying. The majority of the feedback that I have received is I didn't put in the time. I didn't finish reading the chapters. I only read them once. I had issues in my family that I had to deal with. All kinds of reasons. And I know you all have a family. But this year, these 12 months in your life are going to be very important to you. And we've told you before, your family has got to get used to the fact that you are in school. And I know some of you may be trying to work, caring for your parents, have had losses in your family. I realize that. But I'm just telling you, you need to try to get, you are the important person for the next 12 months. You need to try to have time to study. And so I would say spend the time studying, read those chapters more than once, listen to my videos, listen to all those YouTube videos. Those will help reiterate some of that information and you will hear those terms more so that all of that will get into your brain. Practice at the end of your chapter. Know the terms. Know all of those terms, and not just the term, but understand what it is associated with when you are studying a specific chapter. When you're studying the integumentary system, know why am I having to study this? Oh, well, it has to do with body temperature. You need to understand not only the term, but how it relates to what it is that you're studying. So I would say more in-depth studying probably is where some of you need to go. I also have been hearing a lot that the students are successful with the study guide. And I have heard that in previous years. So I would highly recommend for you to work through your study guide. You need to get with your study group and y'all do that study guide prior to every test. This unit, Unit 3, has 2 chapters. Now there's no reason why you can't get through that study guide for these 2 chapters. So you need to put the work in order to get these grades up. Seemed like there was one other thing I wanted to go over. If I think of it, I will let you know. But that's the big thing is what I'm hearing is study guide. I'm not putting in enough time. You need to fully understand these definitions. You need to do all of the studies that I have given you. And I've told you, diagram your chapters. That helps you categorize the information. Your PowerPoint pretty much is a diagram, but you need to be doing your own so that you're writing it down and you're truly understanding. Especially when you get to pharmacology, it's going to be real important for you to categorize those drugs and memorize the categories. And so it's the same way with health science. You need to be diagramming your chapters, follow along with your blueprint, and then listen to the video, make notes in your diagram, and then go to your chapters and re-find all that information. Study these tables, study these figures. You have seen that I do take test questions off a lot of these figures and tables that are in your textbook. So if I think of anything else that I want to tell you about study habits, I will just say it in the middle of this video. But what you're seeing now is my screen, and trying to see. And we're going to go over then Chapter 7. I think this unit is Chapter 7 and 14. So we'll be going over that. So these are the outcomes. You can read those on your own. But on page 94 in your textbook, now if this textbook changes, who's ever listening to this video, next year, if the textbook changes, these pages will be different, but you can still follow along. Go to Chapter 7. So the integumentary system serves as a mechanical barrier. It is our skin, so it protects things that are on the other side of our skin. It protects our internal structures. It participates in the immune system. It acts as a gland for vitamin D synthesis. It performs excretory functions like sweating. If you don't know that word, you need to look it up. It performs a sensory role. You can feel touch through your skin, cold, heat. It helps regulate body temperature. The skin, the accessory structures, and the subcutaneous tissue form this integumentary system. There are layers of the skin: the epidermis, the dermis, the subcutaneous, and the accessory structures. You need to know those layers. And we have that in our textbook. Please read about that when it talks about the epidermis and the levels in the epidermis, the stratum corneum and the stratum germabatium. Sorry. You need to know what those are. This is where keratinization occurs. Right here, germination. And keratin is deposited within the cell. The keratin hardens and flattens the cells as they move toward the surface of the skin. In addition to hardening the cells, keratin makes the skin water resistant. So that's very, very good information. We know now where keratin. The stratum corneum is sloughed scales like dandruff. So your scales start sloughing off up here. Then you go down to the dermis, the subcutaneous layer. So you need to know all of those. The subcutaneous is your fat cells, your sweat glands, your nerve glands. Subcutaneous helps regulate our temperature. Then we have the dermis, and the work is done here for pain. So here you see pressure receptors, nerve endings, sebaceous glands, that's our oily glands. We have touch receptors, a pore, our hair, our arteries and veins, our adipose tissue. So you need to know all that. So the epidermis is the outermost part. It is thin. It contains no blood vessels. It is avascular, is what we call when it has no blood vessels, avascular. It has no blood supply of its own. It is a rapid turnover of cells, like the shedding of our cells. So like I said, dandruff, that sort of thing. The dermis is what we call the true skin. It forms the framework of connective tissues. It contains many blood vessels, nerve endings, and glands. It contains collagen and elastic, and it stretches. The dermis. The subcutaneous is the hypodermis. You know, hypo means it's smaller or underneath the dermis, and it is not considered a true layer of skin. You have the accessory structures, which we just talked about, the sweat glands, the sebaceous glands, the hair and nail. So if you talk about dermatology, ologies mean the study of skin and skin disorders. So you have dermatology, you'll hear cardiology. All these ologies are the studies of, and so derma is the skin and skin disorders. So we talked about the epidermis and the germinativa, that's the deeper cells, and they're continually dividing and moving towards the surface. Now be following in figure 7.1, and this will continue to make sense. The stratum corneum, or the surface layer, is composed of dead, flattened cells that slough off. Keratinization. The protein keratin makes skin cells hard, flat, and water resistant. We just read that in your textbook. It is avascular. We just studied that. There are no specific blood vessels that go to the epidermis. And it is responsible for the melatonin, or the deep dark pigment on our skin, our melanin. And that is on page 97. We're talking about skin color. Deep within the epidermal layer of the skin are cells called melanocytes. Melanocytes secrete a dark, skin darkening pigment called melanin. The melatonin stains the surrounding cells, causing them to darken. The more melanin secreted, the darker their skin. We all have the same number of melanocytes, but the amount of melanin secreted is different for each one of us. I'm a very fair person. My children have very olive skin, so they have more melanin than I do. The dermis lies under and supports the epidermis. It sits on the subcutaneous layer, we talked about that, or the hypodermis. It is embedded with accessory structures. It includes blood vessels that nourish the epidermis. It is the largest portion of the skin. The dermis is the largest portion of the skin. And our skin tells a story. It reflects disease processes of the body. An example would be if someone had liver failure and their skin is a yellowish tone, that would tell us that they may be having liver issues of some sort. Drug reactions can be reflected in skin changes. You can have hives or rashes. Chronic irritation, people who have dermatitis, that sort of thing, have chronic irritation. And the skin mirrors your stress level. We get sometimes dehydrated looking, or we claim we have wrinkles because we're under stress. But the skin shows all of that. When people have an allergic reaction to sulfa drugs, and you'll learn more about this, so don't forget it, in pharmacology, that's called Stevens-Johnson syndrome, and it's a lethal syndrome. That's why as a nurse you must pay attention to people's drug allergies. An allergic reaction to sulfa can kill them. And this is an example of what Stevens-Johnson syndrome looks like. So if someone calls you and says they're having hives or they're itching all over, that is not something to be ignored. You need to go check your patient. So more about the hypodermis, or the subcutaneous layer. The tissue lies within the skin. It is highly vascularized, and it has two main roles. Its fat insulates the body from extreme temperature changes in the external environment. So adipose tissue helps us be insulated. Its loose connective tissue anchors the skin to underlying structures. So this layer is very, very important and has two important main roles. If something is highlighted in red in my PowerPoints, you need to pay attention to it. That is not specifically an answer to a test question, but that is telling you it is important enough for me to highlight it. Do I do that with everything? No. But I do try to. The skin can absorb many chemicals, and so we have topical medications for that very reason. And you can give medications through the skin in hypodermic injections or IM injections, through transdermal patches, meaning patches that you put on the dermis, through intradermal injections like allergy testing. In other words, you give an allergy injection different than you give a flu vaccination, for an example. One is hypodermic, goes down into the dermis. The other is intradermal, it goes just right up underneath the skin. Same way with TB testing, it goes just right up underneath the skin. And then topical applications. There is a danger of absorption of toxins and chemicals. So just because you put it on the skin, you need to be very aware of how much you're putting on the skin. And later on, you'll learn about nitroglycerin patches, and you have to pay attention to that and take the old one off, because if not, you could be giving them a dose and a half of medication. So there is a danger of absorption of toxins and chemicals when you just put it on the skin. Our skin color is determined by our genes, our physiology, and sometimes pathology. Like I was telling you, if someone has liver problems, they'll be jaundice or yellowish looking. We talked about melanin, and melanin, you need to know, is secreted by melanocytes in the epidermis of the skin. You will see that question again, and I believe it is in your number 1 in your blueprint. So you see how you will mirror my videos, the PowerPoint, and your blueprint. You go in there and you find the word melanocytes, and you find out, what does that term mean? Where is it? Where do you find them? Well, they're in the epidermis. What do? They cause the pigment to be in your skin. And so people who have a malfunction can have albino, or they can have moles, different things on the epidermis. The melanocytes do different things. The yellow pigment is called keratin, and the presence of melanin overshadows keratin's tint in most people. So we do have a yellow pigment to our skin that is usually overshadowed by the melanin. But people who drink carrot juice, carrots and keratin, they will get an orange skin. And I have had patients that come in and their skin is orange from all the carrot juice they're drinking. The skin has physiological changes. We blush when we are dilated. We get very pale when our blood vessels are constricted. You know, when our, it's called pallor. And when we're fixing to faint or something, you know how people get very, very, very pale. And a lot of other changes too, diaphoretic, that sort of thing. But so we can blush, or we can be very pale. Pathological changes. Cyanosis is a term you need to know. That's a bluish tint, and it shows that we have poor oxygenation. So you will definitely check for cyanosis, and you will usually see cyanosis around the mouth or under the nail beds. And you will check your patients to see, and if their nail beds are blue, you better be getting their O2 sat. Jaundice we've talked about with liver malfunctions, and you will see that either on the skin or in the sclera of their eye. Bronzing, what does bronzing mean? I think that is on your blueprint. Bronzing is when our melanin is overproducing and patients get a real bronze color. Ecchymosis. Ecchymosis is another term for what we used to call a bruise, and it's black and blue bruising. And it is caused either from trauma or the elderly get ecchymosis often on their arms when they're just barely touch them and they get black and blue bruises. The accessory structures are the hair. So here's the hair shaft. Their function are to detect insects, protect your eyes, keep dust out of our lungs. So we have a lot of hair in different areas to help us protect ourselves in our nose, that sort of thing, our eyelashes, and all help protect our fragile organs. Hormones can affect the growth of our hair. Melanin influences the color of our hair. Our hair arises in the epidermis, plays a cosmetic role, of course, and it's called the erector pili muscles, or what control that hair. And they cause the hair to stand up. These muscles cause the hair to stand up. And the hair follicle is surrounded by epidermal tissue. The epidermal cells of the hair receive a rich supply of blood from the dermal blood vessels, as these cells do divide and grow. So our hair grows and it divides and causes us to have new hair growth. Hirsutism is the overgrowth of hair, and alopecia is the loss of hair. Now, one thing I was asked this week, Miss Terry, I didn't know that there were notes on your PowerPoint page. I had posted an announcement in pharmacology, and I thought it was also in health science, but many of you already knew that. But at the bottom of each page, there are notes. And so you need to, when you print your PowerPoint, if you do, or when you look at it, make sure you're looking at the notes. And that is extra information. Most of it I cover in the PowerPoint itself, but it's still a good thing to know that is there. So they're called notes, and you can display those while you're looking at your PowerPoint. Now we're going to talk about nails. Nails are made up of a free edge, nail body, and a nail root. Contains a hard form of keratin. That's what forms our nails. The lunula is the shows us the nail growth, and you see there in the photograph it looks like a little half moon, and that is showing us our nail growth. Some people it is quite large, some people it is very, very small. Mine is sort of mixed. Some of my nails I don't even see it, and some it is what I would call normal. So everyone is a little different. Our nails protect the tips of our fingers and our toes from injury, and the conditions affected by oxygenation of blood supply, trauma, and nutritional deficiencies are noticed in our nail beds. Like I told you, if they're blue, then that's a blood supply issue, an oxygenation issue. So we have the nail body, the nail root, the nail bed, the bones in the nail, this free edge, the cuticle, and of course the lunula. Nails are thin plates of stratified squamous epithelial cells. They contain a very hard form of keratin and slide over a layer called the nail bed, which is part of the epidermis. The pink color of the nails is caused by the blood vessels in the underlying dermal layer beneath the nail. The cuticle is a fold of stratum corneum that grows onto the proximal portion of the nail body. And clubbing is a term